Hi everybody, it's Miss Lorenz here. I'm going to talk about 1.4. This is in the 8th grade section. We're looking at square roots and cube roots. So pretty fun. And this little problem that we're starting with has to do with squares and area, but it also could do with rectangles. So let's just look at it. So Matt and his dad are building a treehouse, and they buy enough flooring material to cover an area that is 36 square feet, and you have to figure out all the possible dimensions of the floor. It doesn't say what shape the floor is, but looking at the picture, I think the floor is rectangular. And so I'm going to think of all the factor combinations that I can come up with for 36. So you could have a 1 by 36 square floor or rectangular floor. That is not very practical, so I'm guessing that's probably not it. But 1 times 36 is 36, so that does fit the bill. 2 times 18 works. I don't think that's very practical either. Only 2 feet wide. You'd be like scooting past each other for sure. 3 by 12. 3 times 12 is also 36. So that's a bit more practical. Maybe not super practical yet. Now we get into those that are seemingly pretty practical. 4 by 9. 4 times 9 is 36. So a 4 by 9 would work. And then the one I actually think is the most practical is actually ends up being the square. A 6 by 6 square is 36. So just to remind us, when we talk about square roots, we know that when we multiply 6 times itself, so this is where square root comes from, the square root of 36 is what number times itself equals 36. We would call 36 a perfect square because it has an answer that is a perfect whole number. So this is one of our perfect squares that you should have memorized. The other way we might want to write this is we know that 6 squared is 36. So we know that relationship. And so since we know that relationship, we know that the square root of 36 is 6. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to the next page. Just a reminder, you guys should be doing this with me as I go through it. Okay. All right, in this one, we're looking at perfect cubes, and that might be the first time you've heard of perfect cubes. So we talk about perfect squares, but now we're going to talk about perfect cubes. Whereas in the last problem, we had, so just disregard this for right now, we have that square, two-dimensional square, where 6 times 6 is 36, and the area is 36. So this square root symbol tells us what the side length of the square would be, the two-dimensional square. But now we're going to look at three-dimensional figures. And so we want to figure out what number times itself again, so again that would be a perfect cube, would equal that number as the volume. So of course to find the volume of this cube, we would multiply the length times the width times the height. Or in this case, it's some number times some number times some number. And so the way that we notate that is we write a square root symbol, but we put a little 3, like a superscript 3 above it. So we're looking at the cube root of 216. So we're trying to figure out what number times itself equals 216. And that number is 6. Because 6 times 6 is 36, times another 6 is 216. All right, you can try this out with 64. I would say, you guys, that it's good for you to memorize some of these perfect cubes. Like 216, that's an important perfect cube to memorize. 64, that's an important perfect cube to memorize. 64 is a pretty special number because look at this. The square root of 64 is 8. So it's a perfect square. Perfect square. But it's also a perfect cube because 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. So 64 is a special number because it's both a perfect square and a perfect cube. Okay, let's go ahead and just do a few more problems together before you get after this on your own. So notice how this is notated. It's cube root of 27, and there's a little superscript 3 here. So I'm looking for what number times itself equals 27. Well, I know that 9 times 3 is 27. And I know that 3 times 3 is 9. So I know that 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27. This is square root, so I'm looking at the square root of 25, which is 5, because I know that 5 times 5 is 25. This is the square root of 81. It's another perfect square, because I know that 9 times 9 is 81. And this is the cube root of 1. And I know that that's going to be 1, because I know that 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1. All right. I think you probably have enough now to go and do the practice problems. So give that a try, and thanks for listening.